Hello crafty friends, I'm Lynn from Studio Kato and I'm so glad you're joining me again today. For today's card, I am making a gatefold design by doing some partial die cutting with some really fun dies by A Pocket Full of Happiness. This is the die set I'll be using today. It's the Floral border die set, and as you can see, there's a base layer and an outline layer. I'm starting out by making a simple gatefold card base. To do this, I take a piece of 5.5 by 8.5 inch and I score it at both sides at 2 1/8 of an inch. So these are the exact same dimensions you would need for a regular side folding A2 sized note card. I use my Fiskars trimmer to do this, but you could also use your scoreboard if that's what you have. I'm taking care to make sure all the folds are creased nicely and pressed down nicely because this is very thick cardstock. It's Canson Montval watercolor cardstock in the 300 GSM weight. Now I'm a little bit off screen here. I'm sorry I didn't notice while filming, but what I'm doing is lining up the edge of the die with the score line. I'm placing the final cutting line right over the score line. So on the other side as where my flowers are. And I will be lining up my cutting plates and my die cutting machine to be not over that final cutting line. So it won't cut through past the score line. Partial die cutting is really easy. You just make sure that everything you want to cut is between your die cutting sandwich, so underneath a cutting plate, and anything you don't want to cut is not underneath a cutting plate. Now I'm just trimming away the excess because it didn't cut all the way through, so I am making sure that the gates of my gatefold design are just the flowers. And then I can simply peel away the excess and I'll be left with some beautiful floral gates for my card. So I chose to use the base layer die to cut my gatefolds. I will color it in and add the outline layer on top of that. But you could also, if you want to make it a little easier on yourself, use the outline die to make your gatefold. That will save you some steps, and it will be a really fun and intricate result as well, so that's definitely worth a try. So I'm choosing to color this floral piece with my Concord and 9th inks and just doing some ink blending. You could do some watercolor or even do some coloring with alcohol markers, whatever you want. I'm not at all trying to be precise about this because I'm not masking anything off except for the back of my card base. But you could mask off the leaves or mask off different parts while you're blending one color, but I really don't mind my colors to bleed over in this design, so I'm just skipping that step. I really love the color selection of these Concord and 9th inks. I got the full Incube set and I'm really happy I did because it's a really fun and complete color palette. I'm coloring both borders the exact same way because I didn't want this to be too busy and use too many colors. I'm sticking to some yellows and orange, some pinks, and then some greens for the leaves. Obviously, it's not super easy to know where one image ends on this shadow layer, this base layer. So I have the die set next to me while I'm doing this, and on the back of it you have a complete colored example of this. So that absolutely helped me place the colors and make sure there wasn't too much overlap between everything. I'm using some greens now for the leaves. And I don't think you see me changing my blending brushes in this video, but I do. I have a brush for each color group. So I don't think you see me changing my blending brushes during this video, so I just wanted to point out I do. I have one blending brush for each color group. That makes it so I don't have to constantly clean my brushes. I do make a lot of cards, so that saves me a lot of time. And it's also important that I use different brushes for my oxidings entirely. So the brushes I use for my oxidings never touch my dye inks. That would ruin your dye ink pads or ink cubes. I'm going in with a teal color to darken up the green and to make it a little more blue instead of yellow. And I'll even color one leaf completely teal. I think the ink is Peacock. I might be wrong. All the inks I used will be in the description below. This is a fairly, not really intricate, but the leaves and the tiny little flowers on the sides aren't super sturdy, so it's important to hold them down while you do your ink blending, because you'll fold them and crease them otherwise. And I was just holding the outline layer over it to see if I liked my coloring. As you all know by now, I really like to add dimension to my die cuts by stacking a few layers of them on top of each other. So I cut 2 outline layers for each side of my gatefold. I'm using the Barely Art Precision Craft Glue to do this, and that has a really fine tip, but I still like to dab off any excess glue onto a scrap piece of paper. So once I add my glue to the entire piece, I just put it down onto a scrap piece of paper that gets rid of all the excess glue, and then makes it so I never have any problems with glue oozing out of the sides. I can then put my 2 stacked layers on top of my base layer and get rid of that little border that the die cuts. And I did the exact same thing on the other side. Now I wanted to add a little bit of extra color, so I'm adding a piece of paper. This is barely paper. I think it's colored copy paper actually, but it was in my stash, so I used it. It's mint green, and I am using glue runner to add that to the inside of my card. I almost never use tape runner, but I do use it for really thin paper because glue will show through it and warp it. And even double-sided adhesive that I have will show through because it's thicker than the paper. For my sentiment, I'm also using a die by A Pocket Full of Happiness. I cut the base layer twice from white cardstock and stack those together. And now I'm going to stack together the scripty layer, which I cut 3 times out of black cardstock. This isn't too intricate. It looks really fine on the video, but it's really easy to add glue to it. And this die that I cut from the black cardstock also cuts out the outline, which would be a really fun look as well. Also, I am really sorry that my fingers are so inky in this video. I did a galaxy background just before this with some ink smushing, and my fingers got all stained. I got rid of a lot of it, but obviously not all of it. I hope it'll be gone by the next video. So that's the sentiment all assembled. As you can see, it comes in 2 parts, basically. I really like the look of it, but it does take a little bit extra effort to assemble it and put it on your card. Now I'm making a band to hold the card closed. I'm just using vellum for that. I cut a 1.5 inch strip to do that, and I'm just adhering it together with my tape runner, because that's what was closest to me at the time. I'm just going to adhere the sentiment on top of the vellum using more of that Barely Art Precision Craft Glue. And that basically finishes up the card. I'm just going to add some embellishments, because I can't not use embellishments anymore. I'm using the Crystal Glass collection by Little Things from Lucy's Cards, and this comes with really fun things in it. It's all clear embellishments, so it goes on every card, and it has some gems in it, some bubbles in it, and some diamonds as well, like diamond shaped, which aren't flat back, but they are fun too. I'm using some with an iridescent finish. I'm using some gems and bubbles. I'm not using as many as you saw me put on. I remembered that this was a Gatefold card and that the belly band had to slide off, so I didn't add any extra embellishments or dimension to the card itself. I only added a little to the belly band. For the matching envelope, I am using Clairefontaine DCP 250 GSM paper, and I'm following the instructions on the We Are Memory Keepers 123 punch board to make an A2 sized envelope. And I didn't really know what to do with this envelope because I didn't want to die cut anymore. I just put my machine away, but I saw this negative space lying around from the Hello die, and I thought I'd use it as a stencil, and I actually really like this design. It didn't come out perfectly, but I really want to use it on a card someday. So I'm just using more of those Concord and 9th inks and blending through my makeshift stencil. But obviously, because of the very stylized font, this doesn't look like much, just ink blended. So I'll add some white gel pen over all of the stenciled spaces to add in the scripty word so it will be readable, legible. And I'll single out one word. I think I chose the orange one, the only one that's fully on there, to trace in black fine liner. So it'll stand out a little more. So I'm just stenciling a couple words on there, just enough to make it interesting, overlapping some of them, and making sure they're not all the exact same length on the envelope. So it looks a little bit more organic, like it was patterned paper or something. And like I said, I will trace over this. Now the black fine liner. And that's it. The envelope will be all finished in a few seconds, and my card is finished as well. I did add some Wink of Stella brush pen to the sentiment. I'm not sure if I showed that or not, but yeah, that adds a little bit more sparkle to the card, and I really like how it turned out. I hope you like it as well. If you did, make sure to leave a thumbs up and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. You can find all the supplies I used in the description box, and I hope you subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of my videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.